very much, James. Everyone hear me okay? So, my name is Shona Hunter and I'm a paper conservator at the National Library of Scotland. And this is my co-author, Clara Molina Sanchez, who I'm sure some of you will know. She's the founder and director of Spectral Heritage. In this presentation, we're going to discuss a recent project that we collaborated on. At the heart of the project is an object which is literary, artistic, national and social significance. However, it was constructed from humble corrugated cardboard. The object was treated by one of my colleagues, Conservator Gordon Yeoman. I got involved with the project last year when the new V&A in Dundee sent us a loan request. That request turned into an opportunity for the library's digital and conservation departments, as it culminated in the creation of a suite of 3D digital models. Before I hand over to Clara, who will tell you about the 3D models and how they were made in a bit more detail, first I'll provide you with some information on what the object is and how the library ended up with it. So, designed as a giant pop-up book, the stage set was created by contemporary Scottish artist John Byrne. It's the original scenery for John McGrath's play, The Cheviot, the Stag and the Black Oil. The play tells the story of Scotland's social and economic history, from the Highland clearances to the discovery of North Sea oil. It was the first play to be performed by the group known as 784 Scotland. Founded in 1971 by John McGrath and his wife Elizabeth McLennan, the group had a distinctly socialist outlook. The company's name was taken from a statistic that claimed 7% of the population in the UK owned 84% of the country's wealth. In 1973, the company toured Scotland with a production that was popular and influential. The set started out as a functional prop. However, by surviving, it evolved into an important piece of memorabilia. In addition, it is also Scotland's largest book. It was acquired by the library in 2009 after being discovered in an attic in Dunbeath Heritage Centre. We considered ourselves to be appropriate custodians as we already held the 784 Scotland archive. Despite its unwieldy scale and dilapidated condition, it was stored rather than scrapped. Its survival is a testament to its status as a unique cultural artefact, something that people have consistently recognised as worth keeping. The stage set has a front and back cover and 5 pages or openings. Each opening is furnished with a group of cardboard pop-ups. The pop-ups, hinged at the base with tape, were originally raised using cords. There was no trickery as the mechanism was entirely visible to the audience. Reminiscent of a children's picture book, the paint inequality is also a deliberate part of the play's styling. In the first scene, McGrath explained that sheep and shooting were more profitable to 19th century landowners than rent for poor tenant farmers. The Cheviot in the title refers to a breed of sheep, and the stag represents the depopulated sporting estates. The next page shows a crofter's cottage. The third scene depicts the same cottage, but this time in ruins, covered in blood with flames licking the walls, which is a reference to the Battle of the Braes on the island of Skye. In the fourth scene, a World War I soldier is depicted surrounded by poppies. Despite the pathos and brutality of the subject matter, the play is actually full of humour, songs and silliness. In parts, the tone and sensibility are a bit like that of Monty Python. The final page depicts a Native American highlighting the cycle of displacement that followed the Scots into the New World. McGrath brings the play into the present by discussing North Sea oil, its discovery and its exploitation. The set once included an oil rig, but this has not survived the test of time. What does survive on the stage set is too large to be consulted in our reading rooms, and the library does not have a suitable space in which to display the object on a permanent basis. Previously, consultation has taken place in our boardroom. As with any pop-up book, the movable parts are susceptible to damage. Consequently, turning the pages requires careful consideration and at least 2 pairs of hands. To minimise handling, consultations and displays have been restricted to a single opening. As a result, people have been unable to read the story from beginning to end. Our first attempt to solve this problem was a film showing each of the pages being turned. The film is available to view on YouTube at the following link. Following the referendums on Scottish independence and Brexit, interest in the play has been renewed. The latest production was staged in 2016, by the Dundee Rep Ensemble. The 1974 BBC adaptation recorded the play as it was performed to the people of North Uist and Benbecula. It included close-ups of the audience and interviews with oil industry workers. Extracts from the film can be viewed on YouTube at the following link. On arrival at the library, the extent of the wear and tear became evident. The spine was exposed and the sewing had deteriorated. The corners and edges were bumped and many of the pop-ups had become detached. Basically, it no longer functioned as a book or a stage set. It required extensive structural repair work to enable it to be exhibited. In 2010, during a panel discussion at the library, members of the original cast stated that the set had been strapped to the roof of the company's van to transport it around the country. It endured a lot of handling as it was transferred between venues, and the rooftop travel exposed it to some of Scotland's famously erratic weather. Its tatty appearance was also due to the unstable nature of the materials that were used to construct the set. However, remarkably, the painted surfaces were in quite good condition. After assessing the item, conservators at the library proposed a course of remedial treatment. Commissioned by the library, this work was carried out by John Allison, a Glasgow-based bookbinder. The work was outsourced as the conservation department did not have the capacity or space to tackle the project in-house. John and his team gave the set a new spine and secured and consolidated the damaged pop-ups. Given its dilapidated condition, a few alterations were necessary. We considered the treatment to be ethically acceptable, since the stage set had undergone many running repairs during the original production. Some of those actually involved duct tape. The work was carried out to resuscitate the object rather than restore it. To date, we have not done any in-painting or attempted to fix any of the friable pigments. The stains, creases and bumped corners are evidence of the set's travels throughout the land whose story it was intended to tell. However, the set has many moving parts and the pages are quite flexible. When and where the hinges failed, the pop-ups were reattached with a strip of aerolin. To keep the floor of each page level, plastic mattresses were placed beneath the front and back boards as necessary. Essentially, these performed the same task as a book wedge. The stage set was not designed to function as a standalone object. To make the pop-ups self-supporting, we added a number of perspex rods. These plug into cardboard sockets adhered to the back of each section. However, the cottage on page 2 tended to pitch forwards. In this case, the rod system was not enough. Instead, cords were attached to the corners like guy ropes. The cords can be tied to overhead fixtures in the room or attached to a plank of wood positioned behind the set. The cords and rods were designed to be as unobtrusive as possible. In addition to preserving it for as long as possible, conservation work was carried out to enable safe and meaningful exhibition of the stage set. The library functions as a long-term custodian and a caretaker, but it is also responsible for facilitating access to collections in the present. This task becomes more pressing when it comes to objects which are inherently unstable. Between December 2009 and May 2010, the stage set featured in a library exhibition called Curtain Up. In March 2012, it was exhibited at the Gaelic Arts College on Skye. The set was delivered to the school's assembly hall, where students performed in front of it. We felt that this loan was in keeping, since the original cast had performed in similar venues. The set has already graced the floor of over 100 town halls, gymnasiums and community centres. However, we drew the line at strapping it to the roof of the library's van to get it there. Instead, the stage set was wrapped in Tyvek, placed inside the van and carefully couriered to the venue. Earlier this year, a curator from the new V&A in Dundee sent us a loan request. She wished to display the stage set in the museum's Scottish Design Gallery. As part of the loan agreement, the V&A agreed to support a jointly funded project that would use photogrammetry to create a suite of digital 3D models. The digital department at the library had been searching for items that would be interesting to capture in 3D. When they discovered that the stage set was going on loan, they saw that it was an ideal candidate. John Byrne, the artist, signed an agreement permitting the library to make and use the 3D models, effectively signing over his intellectual property rights for the stage set. Spectrum Heritage was appointed to photograph the stage set and deliver the 3D models. Based in Scotland, Clara and her team have a background in conservation, archaeology and computer science. The company mantra is, technology should be used to service heritage and not the other way around. This approach was reassuring to the Conservation Department at the library. We knew that we could trust Clara's team as they understood the fragility and irreplaceable nature of the original object. A suitably large space was required to capture the stage set. Our boardroom is in constant use, so we had to find an alternative venue. We turned to the National Galleries of Scotland and specifically to their sculpture store at Dalmeny. Working in this warehouse, Clara and her team photographed the stage set from every conceivable angle. And it's at this point that I will hand over to Clara, who will tell you a bit more about that process in detail.
Thank you, Shona. Can you hear me? When we had the first meeting with the National Library to talk about the digitization of the Cheviot book, they showed me some photographs, but we had a real perception of the size of the object. And automatically they asked, can you 3D scan this? And we said, yes, of course. It's a very exciting project. Soon after, we arranged a meeting to see the actual pop-up book, and it needed 4 people to move it and open the pages. So it was at this moment we understood the actual size and the magnificence of the object. It was very difficult to get the sense of the dimensions just with a few photographs. Within a few minutes, it became immediately obvious that the capture was not going to be as straightforward as we thought. And this was completely different from any object we'd digitized before. But unfortunately, we like a challenge, who doesn't? So we realized that we had a few challenges that we needed to grapple with. The first challenge was the size, as you can tell. The book is huge. It's over 3 meters high, it's 3 meters wide. And the main issue with this size is that, as Shona was explaining, the book is made of very thin cardboard. So the panels were very big, the edges were extremely thin, so we were quite concerned about how to capture this. So we went straight away to have a look at the edges. So in this picture you can see how it's fairly thin. Some areas were up to 1 centimeter, but some areas were completely crashed, so they're really, really thin. The pages were fairly simple. They are flat surfaces, so quite easy to digitize in photogrammetry. However, the edges are extremely intricate and very thin compared to the rest of the object, I was saying. So very soon we started suspecting that we will start having problems with depth of field. So we really wanted to create a 3D model that had a lot of detail, so the conservators could actually use it for recording and identifying a deterioration. So when we took the first photos, we realized that the areas in focus were very small, so that pushed us to actually take hundreds of photos every few centimeters to be able to cover all the edge. And you will see in the photos it's like this very big, there's very long edge, there's meters and meters of the edge. So one of the first questions we have to ask ourselves is like, are we going to be successful? It's like, there was 2 very large panels used for a very thin edge. Is this going to align in photogrammetry? Is this not? So that was our first concern. The second challenge was the height. Some of the pages were up to 3 meters high, and we needed to be quite careful about how to capture the border, especially on the top. So the first reaction was like, okay, we'll get a ladder. But very soon after, we realized that we won't be able to actually access the pages in the middle, so we could access the ones that were right on the edge. But the ones in the middle of the book were not accessible. We thought about scaffolding, but that was not possible, so we had to get a little bit creative. We even thought about building a whole rig just because of this, but it was definitely not cost efficient. So the third challenge was the morphology of the object, or the shape. As Shona was explaining really well, the book is made of pop-up panels, and some of them are really, really close together. In these pictures, you can actually see how the panels are super close. And it's very challenging to actually get into the pages and to let that area is quite well without hard shadows. So we needed to find a way to get there to actually without actually standing on the book. That obviously that was not possible. The fourth challenge was the stability of the object. Shona mentioned earlier, it's very thin. They have to create a way to make the panels to be standing up. It's not an object that's been conceived to be self-supported. So any floor vibration will translate on the object, it will move it, and it will potentially create problems with the data processing stage. So we really have to take that into account. We were extremely lucky because the National Gallery of Scotland let us use their space, and it was a concrete floor, so we had no vibration whatsoever. We had plenty of space to put the equipment. The light conditions were great, so we could actually control it, so it was the perfect environment to do it. So after this first meeting and this first assessment of the book, we took a quick data set to see if we had any problems with the alignment, because to be honest with you, we were quite nervous about it. But the first tests were really, really promising. So once we got confident that we could actually achieve the amount of people that we were aiming for, we would have to start planning because we had a very, very limited time with the object. We had just 1 week. The logistics of moving this book is, as you can imagine, enormous. So we had just 6 days to digitize the entire, well, the 5 pages and the covers. It sounds like a lot of time, but actually it wasn't. It was quite tight. So some of the pages were very straightforward, as you can see. I don't know if I can actually pointer. No. So on the left side, you can see how one of the pages is just one panel, and that was extremely easy to capture. However, the one on the bottom, that's the scene of the stag, and you can see how there's so many panels. They are very close together. Some of them are overlapping. So that was a challenge. We needed to ensure that the lighting was appropriate, so we spent quite a lot of time preparing light positions and trying to get an idea, but actually until we didn't get to the place of capture, it was quite difficult to control. But we invested quite a lot of time in planning. Thanks to that planning, the capture went really, really well. We managed to document everything in 5 days, I think, and we literally took thousands of photographs of each page. And it sounds like a lot when you see an object that has this plain surfaces, but actually on the border we had to spend so many hours just capturing every centimeter. So by the end of the week we had over 1 terabyte of data, so that was a lot of processing time. We used a couple of tools that they were extremely useful during the capture and actually sort out most of our problems. You have one of them in front of you, that's a 4-meter camera boom. So we used this to reach the areas that we could not actually handle in the book. So, and actually work out really, really well. And the other tool that we used was a 7-meter telescope pole to get higher areas and to get reference shots. Just for safety, because we didn't know how the capture was going to go, and we had very limited time. We didn't actually have time to process between captures, and we would not have access to the object again. So we decided to take one photo for each panel. So basically at the end of the capture of the page, we will take slowly one panel at a time and take one of the photo in case we needed to actually project the textures into the mesh. But actually that was not needed. The texturing was actually really, really good. So this is some of the photos, like panels. We also paid a lot of attention to the edge of the book. We have the intention of aligning the pages with the cover underneath, and I'll show you later why we were quite concerned about it, and probably we were right. So we took hundreds of photos to make sure that we could have a decent alignment. So in terms of the data processing, I'm afraid we don't have much time to go into too much detail, but if you want to talk about it, I'm very happy to talk to you through the coffee. We just had a couple of workflows. I just actually really struggled to align the front and the back. It didn't like it at all. So we ended up using reality capture and actually produced really good results. So this is what I was mentioning before. The intention is, because the outcome of the models were dissemination, but also research. Like for the dissemination, we wanted to have a model that it was full, so you could see it from the back and you could turn it over and actually see the cover. That was not as straightforward as we thought. And the reason why, and this is not something we thought in advance, is some of the panels are loose, and every single time you turn the page, things move slightly. So every page was completely different, and every single time we captured the border, it was completely different, it was misaligned. So David, who is in the audience right there, he spent many hours trying to align the 3D models, but he made a fantastic job. So you can see here how the covers underneath, the tops there, and he managed to align those. Required a little bit of modeling in some areas because it was quite dark. So we got an agreement with the National Library to deliver the data in various forms of different purposes. So we created a high-resolution 3D model textures with textures for archiving purposes and research, and we also created 3D models, well, designated 3D models for dissemination purposes, so basically to upload them in Sketchfab and make it reachable. Each 3D model had the metadata spreadsheet explaining everything from the data capture to data processing. We created a 3D renders to make their life a little bit easier in terms of presentation, and we created these GIFs that they are quite easy to display in our presentation. And also for ease, we put all the 3D models in one scene so it could be seen in a headset in VR. So all the models are freely accessible online in Sketchfab, and I think I really need to mention Thomas Flynn, who was extremely helpful, and I think it was helpful. He helped to set up the account for the National Library and actually helped them to change the settings of the models to make it look a little bit better. So he was very helpful. So before I hand it over to Shona again to talk about the future plans, I would like to mention briefly what our plan is. From a conservation point of view, we're very interested in 3D and using 3D data to create a way of visualizing conservation needs and treatments. As well, if anyone in the audience is a conservator, you know that reports are really lengthy, technical, and definitely not accessible for the wider public. They're very boring. So this is an example we did from the Glasgow Council. It's a sundial, and basically it's just a way of visualizing alterations and treatments, and just allow the viewer to see the conservation treatment in a way that is both visual and easily understandable. So the plan is to actually do the same with the book. So.
We're out of time, so I'll be quite quick with this bit. But basically, the conservation element of this project came as a secondary benefit, albeit a really important and useful one. From the outset, the Conservation Department were keen to collaborate with Clara and her team, as we really understood the value of 3D models as a tool for identifying and recording damage and deterioration, and the stage set has a lot of deterioration. The stage set was couriered to the new V&A in August, when it was set up on a bespoke plinth. It will remain there for the next 25 years. During the installation, the conservator referred to the 3D models on a portable tablet. Going forward, as Clara suggested, we would like to map the stage set's ongoing deterioration issues. Essentially, Clara and I hope to develop the project by applying new layers of information to the existing models. 25 years is a long time for an object to be on display. Of course, the light levels will be carefully controlled. During an interview with the artist, he confirmed that he had used water-based poster paints and oil pastels to create the scenes. materials which are known to be light sensitive. During the loan, each opening will be displayed for a maximum of 5 years. This is actually double our usual recommendation. However, we've accepted this because it's unlikely that the stage set will be displayed elsewhere afterwards. The V&A loan is like an opportunity for the stage set to perform its swan song. In addition, we're hoping to take readings over the course of the display as soon as we're able to purchase a portable spectrophotometer. We will use the 3D models to pinpoint and record the test sites. The models are a great supplementary resource for the V&A, as they can show the hidden pages alongside the one which is being displayed. In addition, the models can be viewed at any time or day or night from any location across the world. In the near future, we would like to use the models in a creative way. For example, we could restage the play using virtual reality by inserting actors or animations. Using VR and AR, there's a lot of scope for audience interaction, and we feel that this would be appropriate as the original production actively encouraged audience participation. The stage set may have left the library, but our conservation work, both traditional and digital, has ensured that it is more accessible than ever. As Scotland's story continues to be shaped, conservators at NLS will continue to preserve and present that story page by giant page. To accomplish this, we will continue to inform effective working partnerships with contractors like Spectrum Heritage and with our sister organisations like the V&A in Dundee and the National Galleries of Scotland. And as Clara pointed out, to have a look at the models, please visit the library's website where you will find a link to them on Sketchfab. Thank you very much for your time and for listening.